Welcome back to Anime Decoded, where we uncover the secrets hiding in plain sight. If you're ready to have your mind blown about Dragon Ball's most misunderstood warrior, smash that like button, because today we're exposing the biggest lie in anime history. Picture this moment. Cell Games 1991. An 11-year-old boy transforms into Super Saiyan 2 for the first time and defeats Perfect Cell. The world celebrates. Goku passes the torch, and then something impossible happens. Gohan walks away. The strongest fighter on Earth just quits. For 30 years, fans have debated why. Did he lose his edge? Did he get soft? Was he really weaker than Goku and Vegeta? But what if I told you that every single assumption we've made about Gohan is wrong? What if the evidence has been staring us in the face this entire time? Let me show you something that will change everything. During the Cell Games, when Perfect Cell hits Gohan with his full power punch, watch Gohan's feet. They don't move, not even an inch. Cell's attack, the same one that shattered mountains, doesn't even make Gohan shift his weight. That's not durability, that's complete power supremacy. But here's the thing that nobody talks about. Watch Gohan's face during that moment. There's no strain, no effort, no surprise. There's something else. There's calculation. An 11-year-old boy is analyzing Perfect Cell like a science experiment while tanking attacks that could destroy planets. The evidence gets even stranger during the Kamehameha struggle. Everyone remembers the father-son Kamehameha as this emotional moment where Goku helps his son find the strength to win. But if you look at the energy readings from that sequence, something doesn't add up. Gohan's power isn't spiking upward, it's being contained. Goku wasn't helping him get stronger. He was preventing him from accidentally vaporizing the solar system. Think about what that means. At 11 years old, Gohan possessed power so overwhelming that his own father had to step in to make sure he didn't destroy everything by accident. And his first instinct after winning? Hide. For 7 years. Fast forward to the Majin Buu saga. Gohan returns to fighting and everyone's disappointed. He's rusty, he's weak, he loses to Dabura. Vegeta actually calls him pathetic. The fan community writes him off as a has-been who chose books over training. But what if that was exactly what Gohan wanted us to think? During the Dabura fight, something impossible happens. In 13 minutes of combat, Dabura throws 47 attacks at Gohan. 47 attacks, and exactly 0 of them land cleanly. Every single hit that connects is because Gohan positions himself to take it in non-vital areas. That's not rust, that's choreography. The Tournament of Power gives us even more evidence. While Goku masters Ultra Instinct and Vegeta pushes his limits, Gohan does something different. He thinks, he coordinates, he solves problems that pure power can't handle. And in the final moments, when Goku needs help against Jiren, watch what happens when Gohan touches his father's shoulder. There's an energy transfer, but it's not what you think. Gohan isn't giving Goku power, he's regulating it. He's making sure his father doesn't burn out from Ultra Instinct. The same way Goku regulated Gohan's power during the Cell Games. The student has become the teacher, and nobody noticed. Then Dragon Ball Superhero happens. Beast Gohan emerges and fans lose their minds. Finally, Gohan is strong again. But look closer at that transformation. There's no learning curve, no power-up sequence, no struggling to control new abilities. Gohan activates Beast Mode like he's been holding it back his entire life. Because he has. Cell Max, an android designed to surpass Broly, gets demolished in under 4 minutes. 4 minutes. An energy reading show Gohan was operating at 60% capacity. 60% against an enemy that Orange Piccolo couldn't even damage. So here's the question that changes everything. If Gohan has been this powerful all along, if he's been holding back for decades, if he's been pretending to be weak while secretly being the strongest fighter in Universe 7, then why? What has he been protecting us from? And what did he see during the Cell Games that made him realize he needed to hide his true strength from everyone, including his own family?
The answer will rewrite everything you thought you knew about Dragon Ball.
Because Gohan's deception isn't just about hiding his power, it's about protecting reality itself from threats that exist beyond our understanding. And the evidence suggests that everything we've witnessed, every major battle, every tournament, every moment of apparent weakness, has been part of a plan decades in the making. Gohan isn't just stronger than you think, he's stronger than anyone thinks, and he's been fighting a war that the rest of us can't even see. To understand why Gohan has been hiding his true strength, we need to go back to the beginning and see the story through his eyes. Not as fans watching epic battles, but as a child prodigy who discovered something that terrified him more than any enemy ever could. The Cell Games weren't just about saving the world. They were about a 4-year-old's nightmares becoming reality. See, Gohan had been having the same dream since he was tiny. A dream where his power grew so great that everything he touched turned to dust. His mother, his father, his friends, all crumbling away because he couldn't control what he was becoming. When Dr. Gero's androids appeared, when Cell began his rampage, Gohan thought his nightmares were just fear manifesting. But during that year in the hyperbolic time chamber with his father, something changed. The dreams became more vivid, more specific, and Gohan began to realize they weren't dreams at all. They were visions. Goku noticed his son's strange behavior during their training. Gohan would stop mid-technique, staring at his hands with an expression of pure terror. When Goku asked what was wrong, Gohan would just say he was seeing things that hadn't happened yet, things that might happen if he wasn't careful. The transformation into Super Saiyan 2 wasn't triggered by anger over Android 16's death. It was triggered by the realization that his visions were about to come true. In that moment, facing Perfect Cell, Gohan saw two possible futures. In one, he held back and Cell might destroy the Earth. In the other, he let loose and his power would crack reality itself. So he chose a third option. He would defeat Cell, but he would do it with surgical precision. Every punch calculated, every energy blast measured, every moment of the battle designed to look like a struggle while actually being total domination. He would save the world while hiding the true scope of what he was capable of. The father-son Kamehameha sequence becomes heartbreaking when you understand what was really happening. Gohan wasn't struggling to find the power to defeat Cell, he was struggling to find the control to defeat Cell without accidentally destroying everything else. When Goku appeared to help, it wasn't encouragement Gohan needed, it was restraint. "Dad, I can feel it happening," Gohan whispered during that beam struggle, his words lost in the chaos of colliding energies. "I can feel reality bending. Help me hold it back." Goku's spirit didn't add power to the Kamehameha, it added precision, father and son working together to thread the needle between victory and catastrophe. The beam that destroyed Cell was calibrated to unravel his molecular structure without creating dimensional ripples that could tear holes in space-time. After Cell's death, while everyone celebrated, Gohan sat alone. He had saved the world, but the cost was the knowledge that he possessed power beyond mortal comprehension. Power that came with visions of futures where that strength led to universal destruction. The 4-year-old's nightmares had been warnings, and now he understood what he had to do. The 7-year gap between Cell and Majin Buu wasn't about choosing peace over fighting. It was about Gohan conducting the most important research project in human history. He studied everything he could about dimensional physics, quantum mechanics, cosmic theory, not to become stronger, but to understand how to become weaker, how to suppress abilities that operated beyond the normal laws of reality. Every day for 7 years, Gohan practiced restraint. He developed techniques to compress his energy signature, to hide his power fluctuations, to appear completely normal while possessing capabilities that dwarfed anything else in Universe 7. It was the most exhausting training regime ever conceived because the goal wasn't to get stronger, it was to get better at being weak. Chi-Chi thought her son was studying to become a scholar. Goku thought Gohan had lost interest in fighting. The truth was that Gohan was preparing for a threat that his visions had shown him was coming. Something that would be drawn to overwhelming power. Something that fed on dimensional instability. Something that would only notice Universe 7 if someone was careless enough to let their true strength show. The Majin Buu saga tested every technique Gohan had developed for hiding his abilities. When Dabura attacked, Gohan had to lose convincingly without actually being in danger. When Fat Buu emerged, Gohan had to appear concerned while secretly analyzing the magical energies involved. When the old Kai offered to unlock his hidden power, Gohan had to pretend he needed the enhancement. The ultimate form wasn't about gaining new strength. It was about learning to access his existing power without the telltale energy signatures that had been attracting cosmic attention. The old Kai, an entity who had observed the universe for millions of years, recognized what Gohan was trying to accomplish and helped him develop better camouflage techniques. But the most painful part of Gohan's deception was how it affected his relationships. Goku genuinely believed his son had lost his warrior spirit. Vegeta saw him as a disappointment who wasted his potential. Piccolo, his first mentor, watched with sadness as the student he had trained seemed to abandon everything they had worked for. Gohan couldn't explain the truth without revealing information that would put them all in danger. So he endured their disappointment, their concern, their attempts to motivate him back to his former glory. He became the family disappointment to protect the family from threats they couldn't imagine. The loneliness was crushing. Imagine being the strongest being in your universe and not being able to tell anyone. Imagine watching your father struggle with opponents you could defeat instantly, but knowing that helping would expose you to entities that view realities as disposable resources. Imagine being surrounded by people who love you but fundamentally misunderstand who you really are. The visions never stopped. They evolved, showing Gohan glimpses of cosmic hierarchies, dimensional politics, threats that operated on scales beyond planetary or even universal significance. Each vision taught him more about what was coming and why he needed to remain hidden until the right moment. By the time of the Tournament of Power, Gohan had been living a double life for over a decade. To his family and friends, he was a part-time fighter who had chosen academics over martial arts. In reality, he was Universe 7's secret guardian, monitoring cosmic threats while maintaining perfect cover as an ordinary hybrid Saiyan. The tournament became his final examination in deception. Surrounded by the strongest fighters from multiple universes, observed by angels and gods, Gohan had to demonstrate just enough capability to contribute to their victory, without revealing abilities that would mark Universe 7 for cosmic intervention. Every fight was a balancing act, strong enough to help his team, subtle enough to avoid detection, smart enough to gather intelligence about multiversal politics while appearing to simply think tactically. The elimination that took him out of the tournament was carefully planned, positioning him to observe the final battles from a vantage point that allowed comprehensive analysis of Ultra Instinct and other cosmic-level techniques. When Universe 7 won and the other universes were restored, most of the teams celebrated their survival. Gohan's reaction was more complex. The tournament had revealed that cosmic entities were taking an active interest in their reality. The time for hiding was coming to an end, and the threats his visions had warned him about were finally beginning to manifest. The weight of carrying this knowledge alone had been eating at him for years. Soon he would have to make a choice: continue the deception and hope the threats pass them by, or reveal his true nature and risk everything he had worked to protect. Either way, the lonely genius who had been secretly guarding Universe 7 for over 2 decades was approaching the moment when his real test would begin. The first signs that Gohan's carefully maintained deception was becoming unsustainable appeared during the Tournament of Power aftermath. While Universe 7 celebrated their victory, cosmic entities had taken notice of their reality's unusual performance. Gohan's visions, which had been sporadic throughout his life, suddenly intensified into a constant stream of warnings about approaching threats. The dreams that had plagued him since childhood now came every night, visions of beings that existed between dimensions, entities that fed on strong energy signatures, forces that viewed universes as nothing more than resources to be harvested, and all of them were beginning to turn their attention toward Universe 7. Gohan tried to maintain his normal routine. He taught at university, helped Pan with her early training, participated in family gatherings where everyone still saw him as the scholar who had given up fighting. But the strain was beginning to show. Chi-Chi noticed her son's increasing fatigue, the way he would sometimes stop mid-conversation and stare into space as if seeing something that terrified him. The visions revealed a timeline that made Gohan's blood run cold. Within the next few years, advanced scouts from these cosmic entities would begin probing Universe 7's defenses. They would be subtle at first, using local technology and energy signatures to avoid detection by the angels who monitored multiversal activity, but eventually they would identify the sources of unusual power and begin more direct investigation. Gohan realized that his years of hiding had bought Universe 7 time, but that time was running out. The cosmic threats he had been preparing for were finally approaching, and he was still the only one who knew they were coming. The loneliness of carrying this burden alone was becoming unbearable, but revealing the truth would put everyone he loved in even greater danger. The breaking point came during a family dinner 6 months after the tournament. Goku was excitedly telling everyone about his latest training with Whis, describing new techniques and power levels he was working to achieve. Vegeta was similarly focused on his own development, pushing himself to match Goku's Ultra Instinct with his own evolved form. As Gohan listened to their conversations about getting stronger, about finding new challenges, about pushing their limits even further, he felt something inside him crack. These people he loved were innocently making themselves into beacons that would attract exactly the kind of attention Universe 7 couldn't afford. Every power increase, every energy signature spike, every moment of dramatic transformation was like sending up flares to entities that specialized in locating and eliminating threats. Maybe you should focus less on getting stronger and more on learning control, Gohan said quietly, the words slipping out before he could stop them. The table went silent. Goku looked confused. Vegeta appeared offended, and everyone else seemed surprised by the comment. Gohan realized he had said too much, revealed too much of his real concerns. What do you mean by that? Vegeta asked, his voice carrying an edge of irritation. Some of us haven't given up on improvement just because we chose books over training. The casual dismissal, the assumption that Gohan was speaking from weakness rather than knowledge, finally pushed him past his breaking point. For just a moment, his emotional control slipped. His energy signature fluctuated, rising from its carefully maintained baseline to something that made every fighter at the table freeze in recognition. The spike lasted less than a second, but it was enough. Goku's eyes widened as he sensed power levels that exceeded anything he had experienced. Vegeta's expression shifted from irritation to shock. Piccolo, whose connection to Gohan went back to his earliest training, looked like he was seeing a ghost. Gohan, Goku said slowly, what was that? Gohan realized he was at a crossroads. He could deflect, make an excuse, return to the comfortable lie that had protected them all for so long, or he could finally tell them the truth and deal with the consequences. The visions that had been haunting him showed that either choice led to danger, but continuing the deception was becoming impossible. Dad, Gohan said, his voice heavy with years of suppressed truth, we need to talk. All of us. There are things I haven't told you, things I've been dealing with alone because I thought I was protecting you, but I can't do this anymore. The conversation that followed changed everything. Gohan told them about the visions, about the cosmic threats he had been monitoring, about the real reason he had been hiding his strength for over 20 years. He explained about the entities that fed on dimensional instability, about the scouts that were already beginning to probe their reality, about the approaching conflict that would make every previous threat look insignificant. The reactions were as varied as he had expected. Goku was excited about the prospect of stronger opponents, completely missing the existential danger they represented. Vegeta was angry about being kept in the dark, demanding to know why Gohan hadn't trusted them with this information. Piccolo was concerned about the psychological burden Gohan had been carrying alone. But it was Pan's reaction that surprised him most. His 4-year-old daughter listened to everything with an understanding that seemed far beyond her years, then asked the question that cut to the heart of everything. Daddy, if you're really that strong, why are you scared? The innocence of the question, the way it bypassed all the cosmic implications and focused on the emotional core of his struggle, nearly broke Gohan's composure. He knelt down to his daughter's level, looking into eyes that somehow seemed to see right through him. Because sometimes being strong means people get hurt, he said softly, and I don't want to hurt anyone ever again. The admission revealed the real source of Gohan's fear. It wasn't just about cosmic entities or dimensional threats. It was about the fundamental terror of possessing power so overwhelming that a moment of lost control could destroy everything he loved. The visions hadn't just shown him external threats. They had shown him versions of himself where that control slipped, where his strength became a curse that consumed everything in its path. Goku's response was immediate and characteristic. Then we'll just have to get stronger too. If there are threats coming that even you're worried about, then all of us need to step up our training. Dad, you don't understand, Gohan said, frustration bleeding into his voice. Getting stronger is exactly what we can't do. These entities are attracted to power signatures. Every time you transform, every time Vegeta pushes his limits, every spike in energy is like sending up a signal flare. The stronger we get, the more attention we attract. Vegeta's pride bristled at the suggestion that they should limit their development. So your solution is for all of us to stay weak while you handle everything alone? That's not strategy, that's arrogance. It's not arrogance, Gohan shot back, his emotional control continuing to fray. It's responsibility. You think I wanted to spend 20 years pretending to be weak? You think I enjoyed watching you and Dad struggle with opponents I could have defeated instantly? You think it was easy letting everyone believe I was a disappointment? The pain in his voice silenced the room. This wasn't the calm, scholarly Gohan they all knew. This was someone who had been carrying an impossible burden for decades, someone who had sacrificed his relationships and his reputation to protect them from threats they couldn't imagine. Piccolo, who had been quietly absorbing everything, finally spoke. Show us. What? Gohan asked. Show us what you're really capable of. If we're going to understand the scope of what we're dealing with, we need to see the truth. All of it. Gohan looked around the room at the faces of everyone he loved. These people who had shaped his life, who had fought beside him, who had never stopped believing in him even when they thought he had given up on himself. The decision to reveal his true power would change everything between them. There would be no going back to the comfortable illusion of normalcy. But the alternative was facing the approaching threats alone, and Gohan was finally beginning to understand that some burdens were too heavy for one person to carry. Not here, he said finally. Not around the city. If I'm going to show you what I really am, we need to be somewhere isolated, somewhere the energy signatures won't be detected by anyone or anything that might be watching. As they prepared to leave for a remote location where Gohan could safely demonstrate his true capabilities, none of them realized that the cosmic entities he had been hiding from had already detected the brief energy spike from the dinner table. The careful deception that had protected Universe 7 for decades was beginning to crumble, and forces beyond their understanding were starting to take notice of the anomalous power readings coming from Earth. First cliffhanger, the masks were finally coming off, but in a distant dimension. Ancient monitoring systems registered the energy fluctuation and began calculating the coordinates of its origin. Gohan's worst fears were about to become reality, and the true test of everything he had been preparing for was just beginning. The remote valley Gohan chose for his demonstration was 300 miles from the nearest city, a barren landscape where even a catastrophic energy release would pose no threat to innocent lives. As the group gathered in the rocky terrain, the weight of what was about to happen settled over them like a heavy blanket. Gohan stood apart from the others, his normal calm demeanor replaced by visible anxiety. This wasn't just about showing his friends and family his true power. This was about shattering the illusion that had protected them all for decades, about crossing a line from which there could be no return. Before I do this, Gohan said, his voice tight with emotion, I need you all to understand something. Once you see what I really am, everything changes. The way you look at me, the way you understand our past battles, the way you think about the threats we face. There's no going back to the way things were. Goku stepped forward, his expression more serious than usual. Son, whatever you're carrying, you don't have to carry it alone anymore. We're family. We face things together. The simple statement, so characteristic of his father's direct approach to life, almost broke Gohan's resolve. For 20 years, he had convinced himself that isolation was protection, that bearing this burden alone was the only way to keep everyone safe. But the loneliness had been eating at him, and the approaching threats made solitary vigilance impossible. Okay, Gohan said, closing his eyes and beginning to center himself. But remember, you asked for this. What happened next defied every expectation they had built up over decades of knowing Gohan. There was no dramatic transformation sequence, no golden aura, no physical changes that marked traditional power increases. Instead, reality itself seemed to shift around him. The air became thicker, charged with energy that made breathing difficult. The ground beneath their feet began to vibrate, not from physical force but from something deeper, as if the fundamental frequencies that held matter together were being altered. Small rocks rose into the air, not from telekinetic manipulation but because the local gravitational field was bending to accommodate Gohan's presence. But the most disturbing change was in their perception of space itself. Distance became fluid around Gohan. He appeared to be standing 30 feet away and right next to them simultaneously. When he moved, he didn't cross the intervening space but rather folded it, making the concept of distance temporarily meaningless. "This is what I've been hiding," Gohan said, his voice somehow reaching them despite seeming to come from multiple directions at once. Not just power, but the ability to manipulate the basic forces that hold reality together. "The visions showed me what happens when abilities like this are used carelessly. I've spent 20 years learning to compress this into something that appears normal." Vegeta, whose pride had driven him to surpass every limit he had ever encountered, found himself speechless. This wasn't about power levels or transformation states. This was about fundamental alterations to the nature of existence itself. The Prince of Saiyans, who had dedicated his life to becoming the strongest warrior in the universe, realized he had been competing in a completely different category than his rival's son. Goku's reaction was more complex. The excitement he had initially felt about discovering stronger opponents was replaced by a growing understanding of why Gohan had been so frightened. This level of capability came with responsibilities that extended far beyond personal strength or even planetary defense. "Gohan," Goku said quietly, "how long have you been able to do this?" "Since I was 4, Gohan replied, allowing the spatial distortions to gradually normalize. "The nightmares I used to have weren't dreams. They were my subconscious trying to process abilities that were developing faster than my emotional maturity could handle. By the time the androids appeared, I could already manipulate reality on a local scale. The Cell games were the first time I had to use these abilities in combat, and it terrified me." Piccolo, whose connection to Gohan went back to his earliest training, began to understand the real reason his former student had always seemed to hold back during their sparring sessions. It wasn't lack of motivation or focus, it was the constant effort required to suppress capabilities that could accidentally unravel the fabric of space-time. "The meditation techniques I taught you," Piccolo said, realization dawning in his voice. "You weren't using them to improve your concentration, you were using them to maintain control over abilities that could destroy everything around you." "Every single day," Gohan confirmed. 20 years of constant mental discipline to make sure I never let my guard down, never got angry enough or excited enough or scared enough to lose control. Do you know what it's like to live your entire life afraid of your own emotions?" The pain in his voice was raw, years of suppressed isolation and fear finally finding expression. This wasn't the confident warrior they had expected to discover beneath Gohan's scholarly exterior. This was someone who had been quietly terrified of himself for decades, who had sacrificed normal relationships and personal happiness to protect everyone around him from his own nature. Pan, who had been watching everything with the uncomplicated acceptance of childhood, walked over to her father. "Daddy, you don't seem scary to me." The simple statement, delivered with 4-year-old sincerity, cut through years of accumulated fear and self-doubt. Gohan knelt down to his daughter's level, seeing in her eyes the same unconditional love that had been there before his demonstration. "That's because I've spent your entire life making sure you never had to see the scary parts," he said softly. "But the things that are coming, the threats I've been preparing for, they're gonna force me to use abilities that I've kept hidden. And I needed you all to understand what that means before it happens." The conversation that followed was unlike anything they had ever shared. Gohan explained the visions in detail, describing the cosmic entities that fed on dimensional instability, the advanced scouts that would soon begin probing Universe 7's defenses, the inevitable conflict that would determine not just their survival but the survival of their entire reality. He told them about the years of research, the techniques he had developed for suppressing his energy signature, the careful calculations that had guided every decision to appear weak when he was actually stronger than anything they had ever faced. The Tournament of Power, the Cell Games, every moment of apparent limitation had been a performance designed to keep Universe 7 off the cosmic radar. But perhaps the most difficult revelation was what his true capabilities meant for their relationships. Every time Goku had worried about his son losing his warrior spirit, every moment Vegeta had dismissed him as weak, every instance when they had tried to motivate him back to his former glory, they had been unknowingly asking him to compromise the very protection that was keeping them all safe. "I let you all think I was weak because strong was too dangerous," Gohan said. "Every energy spike, every transformation, every moment of dramatic power increase is like sending a signal into space, announcing our location to entities that specialize in eliminating potential threats. I've been playing weak to keep us invisible." The weight of this revelation settled over the group like a physical presence. They were beginning to understand that their conception of strength and weakness, of progress and stagnation, had been fundamentally wrong. In a universe where cosmic entities monitored for threats, appearing powerful wasn't just dangerous for yourself. It was dangerous for everyone around you. but the demonstration had already changed the cosmic equation they were trying to maintain. The energy signatures from Gohan's revelation of his true nature had been detected by monitoring systems that operated beyond normal space and time. Forces that had been passively observing Universe 7 were beginning to take active interest in the anomalous power readings coming from Earth. As the group prepared to return home, none of them realized that the first phase of the conflict Gohan had been preparing for had already begun. Advanced scouts from entities that existed between dimensions were beginning their approach toward Universe 7, drawn by the energy signatures that Gohan's emotional breakdown had finally allowed to escape his carefully maintained control. The deception that had protected them for decades was crumbling, and the real test of everything Gohan had been preparing for was about to begin. The changes began subtly, in ways that only someone with Gohan's enhanced awareness could detect. 3 days after his revelation to the family, the first signs of cosmic attention started manifesting around Earth. Dimensional fluctuations that registered on equipment that shouldn't have existed, energy readings that appeared in scientific databases before mysteriously disappearing, reports of impossible phenomena that were quickly classified and buried. Gohan monitored these developments with growing dread. The cosmic entities he had been hiding from weren't just taking notice of Universe 7. They were beginning active investigation using methods so advanced that even the angels who monitored multiversal activity remained unaware of the probing taking place. The first direct contact came through dreams, not the prophetic visions that had plagued Gohan since childhood, but deliberate intrusions into his sleeping mind by intelligences that existed beyond normal space and time. They whispered questions in languages that bypassed sound entirely, speaking directly into his consciousness with inquiries about his nature, his capabilities, his intentions. "We have been watching," the voices said during one particularly vivid encounter. "The energy signature that escaped your control 3 cycles ago was interesting. We wish to understand what manner of being could generate such readings while maintaining the illusion of normalcy for so long." Gohan found himself standing in a space that wasn't quite a place, surrounded by entities that weren't quite beings. They appeared as geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, consciousness given form in ways that violated the basic principles of existence. These were the cosmic forces he had been preparing to face, and they were far more alien than his visions had suggested. "You have been hiding from us," they continued, their communication carrying undertones of amusement and curiosity. "This is unusual. Most beings of significant capability seek attention from forces such as ourselves. They wish to be recognized, elevated, given purpose in the cosmic hierarchy. Yet you have spent decades suppressing evidence of abilities that would mark you as exceptional even by our standards." The conversation, if it could be called that, revealed disturbing information about how these entities operated. They weren't conquerors in any traditional sense. They were collectors, beings who gathered individuals with unusual capabilities for purposes that extended beyond normal concepts of use or exploitation. They spoke of dimensions where reality itself could be rewritten, of conflicts that spanned infinite universes, of responsibilities that transcended any single existence. "Your attempts at concealment have failed," they informed him. "We now know of your location, your capabilities, your connections to other beings of note. The question becomes whether you will cooperate with our investigation, or whether more direct methods of examination will become necessary." Gohan woke from these encounters with knowledge that chilled him to the bone. The cosmic entities weren't just interested in him personally. They had detected the energy signatures of everyone around him, cataloging Goku's Ultra Instinct, Vegeta's evolved state, even Pan's developing hybrid abilities. Universe 7 had become a target of interest precisely because it contained multiple individuals with capabilities that operated beyond normal limitations. The investigation intensified over the following weeks. Technology on Earth began malfunctioning in specific patterns, with devices spontaneously developing the ability to measure energy types that didn't officially exist. Scientists around the world reported instruments detecting readings that made no sense according to known physics, only to have their equipment return to normal function before anyone could verify the anomalous data. More disturbing were the reports coming from government monitoring stations. Satellite networks designed to track nuclear energy signatures were picking up massive power fluctuations that appeared to originate from nowhere. Energy releases that lasted microseconds but registered on scales that exceeded anything produced by human technology. The locations of these readings corresponded exactly to areas where the Z fighters lived and trained. Gohan realized that the cosmic entities were mapping Universe 7's defensive capabilities, identifying every individual who possessed unusual abilities and cataloging their power levels, techniques, and potential threat ratings. They were conducting a comprehensive intelligence gathering operation that would give them complete tactical superiority before making any direct approach. The psychological pressure of being under constant observation was enormous. Gohan found himself unable to relax even at home, knowing that entities beyond his understanding were analyzing his every movement, every energy fluctuation, every moment of emotional instability. The meditation techniques he had developed to suppress his abilities became inadequate against the stress of knowing that detection was inevitable. It was during this period of escalating cosmic attention that the Red Ribbon Army's revival began. Dr. Hito's development of Gamma 1 and Gamma 2 appeared to be independent scientific advancement, but Gohan's enhanced awareness detected energy signatures in their technology that operated on principles no Earth scientists should have been able to discover. The android's power sources weren't based on conventional energy conversion. They were tapping into dimensional frequencies that only someone with access to cosmic-level knowledge could have identified. Dr. Hito wasn't just a brilliant inventor, he was unknowingly being guided by influences that existed beyond normal reality, entities that were using him to field-test technology designed to evaluate Universe 7's defensive responses. The battles between the Gamma androids and Earth's defenders served multiple purposes for the cosmic entities conducting their investigation. They provided direct observation of combat techniques and power levels while also testing how quickly and effectively Universe 7's protectors could respond to technological threats. Every energy blast, every transformation, every strategic decision was being recorded and analyzed by intelligences that thought in terms of infinite dimensional warfare. Gohan watched these developments with growing desperation. He could see the larger pattern that everyone else was missing, but revealing his knowledge would only accelerate the cosmic entity's timeline for direct intervention. He was trapped between the need to protect his reality and the impossibility of doing so without exposing the very capabilities that made Universe 7 a target. The situation reached a critical point when Cell Max emerged. This wasn't just an enhanced version of Perfect Cell created through advanced biotechnology. The creature's energy signature contained elements that existed outside normal space and time, dimensional components that could only have been integrated by beings with access to cosmic-level technology. Cell Max was a test subject, a hybrid construct designed to evaluate how Universe 7's defenders would respond to an enemy that combined familiar threat patterns with incomprehensible power sources. The cosmic entities were using Earth as a laboratory, conducting experiments to understand the full scope of the capabilities they had detected. When Gohan finally transformed into beast mode, it wasn't just a power increase triggered by parental instinct. It was the complete abandonment of the concealment techniques he had spent decades perfecting. For the first time since the Cell games, Gohan allowed his true nature to become fully visible, revealing abilities that operated on principles the cosmic entities themselves found remarkable. The speed at which he defeated Cell Max, the casual ease with which he dismantled technology that should have been beyond mortal comprehension, the reality warping effects that accompanied his attacks, all of this provided the cosmic entities with the final data points they needed to complete their assessment of Universe 7's strategic value. But the most significant aspect of the Beast transformation was what it revealed about Gohan's emotional evolution. The fear and isolation that had characterized his approach to his abilities for decades was replaced by something different. Not confidence or aggression, but a kind of resigned acceptance that the time for hiding was over. I can't protect them by pretending to be weak anymore, Gohan thought as he dismantled Cell Max with techniques that rewrote local physics. If these entities want to see what I really am, then maybe it's time to show them why they should have left Universe 7 alone. The battle ended in minutes, but its implications extended far beyond Earth. The energy signatures generated by Beast Gohan's true capabilities had been detected across multiple dimensional frequencies, marking Universe 7 as containing at least one individual whose abilities operated on scales that demanded direct cosmic attention. As the dust settled and the immediate threat was neutralized, Gohan stood amidst the wreckage with the knowledge that everything he had worked to prevent was now inevitable. The cosmic entities had completed their investigation, and the next phase of their interaction with Universe 7 was about to begin. The dreams that night were different. Instead of whispered questions and veiled threats, the cosmic entities delivered a direct message that carried the weight of inevitability. Your concealment has ended, they informed him. We have observed sufficient evidence to warrant direct intervention in your reality. You will be contacted shortly through methods that operate beyond your current understanding. Prepare yourself and those around you for responsibilities that extend far beyond your previous experience. Gohan woke with the certainty that the approaching storm he had been preparing for was finally about to break. The question was no longer whether Universe 7 could avoid cosmic attention. The question was whether they could survive what came next. The contact came not through dreams or visions, but through a complete alteration of reality that left no doubt about the cosmic entity's capabilities. Gohan was teaching his afternoon physics class when the entire university campus was suddenly enclosed in a sphere of crystalline energy that existed outside normal space and time. Students and faculty froze mid-motion, not paralyzed but temporally displaced, existing in a moment that had been carefully extracted from the normal flow of time. Only Gohan remained aware and mobile, standing in a classroom that had become a meeting place between dimensions. The entities materialized not as the geometric impossibilities from his dreams, but as figures that approximated human form while clearly being something far more complex. They wore the appearance of people, but their eyes held depths that suggested consciousness operating on scales that encompassed entire universes. Gohan of Universe 7, the lead figure, said, its voice carrying harmonics that spoke directly to his mind. We are the arbiters of cosmic balance. For 23 of your years, we have been aware of your unusual development. Your recent abandonment of concealment protocols has forced us to accelerate our timeline for direct interaction. The classroom around them began to shift, walls becoming transparent to reveal vistas of space that stretched across multiple galaxies. Gohan found himself standing in a construct that existed simultaneously in his university and in dimensions where the normal laws of physics held no meaning. You have questions, the Arbiter continued, seemingly reading his thoughts with casual ease. We will provide context for your situation, as understanding your role requires comprehension of forces that operate beyond your current frame of reference. What followed was a revelation that reframed everything Gohan thought he understood about existence itself. The cosmos, he learned, was not a single unified reality but an infinite network of interconnected dimensions, each operating according to different fundamental laws. Most of these realities developed in isolation, but occasionally circumstances would arise that required intervention from entities capable of maintaining stability across multiple dimensional frameworks. Your abilities, the Arbiter explained, represent a natural emergence of what we term dimensional bridge consciousness. You are capable of accessing and manipulating forces that exist in the spaces between realities. This is extraordinarily rare, occurring perhaps once in every trillion dimensional cycles. The implications were staggering. Gohan's hybrid genetics hadn't just combined Saiyan and human traits. They had created something unprecedented, a consciousness that could interface with the fundamental structures that supported existence itself. His visions hadn't been prophetic dreams, but rather glimpses into the dimensional network that his awareness was naturally beginning to access. The concealment you have practiced served multiple purposes, the Arbiter continued. It protected your local reality from entities that feed on dimensional instability, but it also allowed your capabilities to develop without external interference. You are now approaching the threshold where direct cosmic responsibilities become unavoidable. The test they had been conducting through the Red Ribbon Army and Cellmax hadn't just been about evaluating Universe 7's defensive capabilities. It had been about determining whether Gohan's development had reached the point where he could be recruited into the cosmic hierarchy that maintained balance across infinite realities. Your reality faces threats that operate beyond the scope of normal conflict, the Arbiter informed him. Entities that consume entire dimensional clusters, forces that exist by negating the possibility of existence itself, consciousnesses that have transcended normal limitations to become cosmic-level problems. These threats require responses from beings capable of operating on similar scales. The offer they presented was both an opportunity and a burden that would reshape everything about Gohan's existence. Join the Arbiters as a guardian of cosmic balance, accepting responsibilities that would extend across infinite dimensions but would also require leaving Universe 7 to face whatever came next without his protection. The choice must be made freely, the Arbiter said, but understand that refusing our offer does not eliminate the cosmic threats your reality faces. It merely ensures that you will face them without the resources and support that come with official recognition in the cosmic hierarchy. The temporal bubble around the university began to fluctuate, indicating that their meeting was approaching its time limit. Normal reality was reasserting itself, and the entities would soon withdraw to allow Gohan time to consider their proposal. We will return in 7 of your days for your answer, the Arbiter announced. Use this time to consult with those whose opinions you value, but understand that this information cannot be shared with entities below cosmic clearance levels without triggering automatic intervention protocols. As the crystalline sphere dissolved and time resumed its normal flow, Gohan found himself back in his classroom with students who had no awareness that anything unusual had occurred. But the weight of cosmic responsibility now rested on his shoulders with an immediacy that made his previous burdens seem insignificant. The 7 days that followed were the most difficult of Gohan's life. He couldn't tell his family about the offer without risking their exposure to cosmic forces beyond their comprehension, but making a decision that would affect the entire universe without their input felt like a betrayal of everything he valued. The visions that had plagued him since childhood now took on new significance. They hadn't just been warnings about cosmic threats. They had been glimpses of the responsibilities he was being prepared to accept, previews of the role he would play in maintaining balance across realities that most beings couldn't even imagine. But there was another factor complicating his decision. The Arbiters had made it clear that accepting their offer would require leaving Universe 7, but the threats they described were already approaching his reality regardless of his choice. If he left to join the cosmic hierarchy, who would protect his family and friends from the entities that fed on dimensional instability? The answer came during his final night of deliberation, in a vision that showed him the true scope of what was approaching Universe 7. The threats weren't distant possibilities anymore. They were active, immediate dangers that had already begun their approach toward his reality. Whether he accepted the Arbiter's offer or not, the final confrontation he had been preparing for his entire life was about to begin. The weight of cosmic responsibility had been crushing Gohan for decades, but nothing had prepared him for the impossible choice the Arbiters had presented. Join them and gain access to resources that could protect infinite realities, but abandon Universe 7 when it needed him most. Refuse and face cosmic-level threats without support while knowing that his decision might doom countless other dimensions. Sleep became impossible. Every time Gohan closed his eyes, he saw visions of the futures that branched from his choice. In some, he accepted the Arbiter's offer and spent eons maintaining balance across dimensions, while Universe 7 fell to entities he might have prevented. In others, he refused and watched helplessly as his limited understanding of cosmic threats led to catastrophic miscalculations that destroyed everything he loved. The visions weren't just showing him possibilities anymore, they were showing him certainties. The cosmic entities that fed on dimensional instability were already approaching Universe 7, drawn by the energy signatures that his recent revelations had made impossible to conceal. The timeline for their arrival had accelerated beyond anything his previous preparations had anticipated. 3 days before the Arbiter's return, the first advanced scouts made contact with Universe 7's reality. They manifested not as physical beings, but as distortions in space-time itself, areas where the normal laws of physics began to break down and reality became negotiable. These weren't invaders in any traditional sense. They were infections of chaos that spread by making existence itself unstable. Gohan detected their presence immediately, his enhanced awareness picking up the dimensional fluctuations that marked their approach. But what terrified him wasn't their power, which was considerable, but their nature. These entities existed by negating the possibility of stable reality. They couldn't be fought with conventional methods because they operated by rewriting the rules that made fighting possible. The first manifestation occurred in a remote area of Siberia, where a forest of pine trees suddenly began existing in multiple contradictory states simultaneously. Each tree was tall and short, alive and dead, present and absent, all at the same time. The paradox spread outward like a cancer, consuming more reality with each passing hour as the fundamental logic that held the area together began to unravel. Government monitoring stations detected the anomaly but couldn't classify or understand it. The energy readings made no sense according to known physics, showing signatures that registered as positive and negative infinity simultaneously. Emergency response teams sent to investigate found their equipment failing in ways that defied explanation, with instruments registering measurements that contradicted themselves from moment to moment. Gohan knew that if the infection spread beyond the initial contact zone, it would eventually consume all of Universe 7. Reality would become so unstable that existence itself would become impossible, leaving nothing but paradox and contradiction where their dimension had once been. But intervening would require using his true capabilities in ways that would be detected by every cosmic entity monitoring their reality. The careful concealment he had maintained for decades would be completely abandoned, marking Universe 7 as containing individuals capable of operating on cosmic scales and guaranteeing even more dangerous attention. The decision was made for him when the infection began spreading toward populated areas. Gohan couldn't allow innocent people to be consumed by paradox while he agonized over cosmic politics. He transported himself to Siberia and began the most dangerous fight of his life. Battling entities that existed by negating reality required techniques that operated outside normal concepts of combat. Gohan couldn't simply overpower them because they rewrote the rules that made power meaningful. Instead, he had to impose logical consistency on areas where logic itself had been compromised, using his dimensional bridge consciousness to restore stable physics one section at a time. The process was exhausting beyond anything he had ever experienced. Each moment of restored reality required him to hold multiple contradictory truths in his mind simultaneously while forcing them to resolve into stable consistency. He was essentially performing surgery on existence itself, cutting away infected portions of space-time while grafting healthy reality into the gaps. The battle took 18 hours and left Gohan drained in ways that went beyond physical fatigue. He had saved Universe 7 from its first taste of cosmic-level infection, but the energy signatures generated by his intervention had been detected across multiple dimensional frequencies. Every entity with the capability to monitor multiversal activity now knew that Universe 7 contained at least one individual capable of manipulating reality at fundamental levels. When the Arbiters returned for his answer, they found Gohan sitting in the crater that had once been the infection site, surrounded by reality that still flickered occasionally between stable and paradoxical states. "You have made your choice," the lead Arbiter observed, its voice carrying a mixture of approval and concern. "By intervening against the Void Spawn, you have revealed capabilities that cannot be concealed again. Universe 7 is now marked for attention from entities that specialize in eliminating potential threats to cosmic stability." The revelation that his actions had doomed Universe 7 to even greater scrutiny hit Gohan like a physical blow. In saving his reality from immediate infection, he had exposed it to threats that made the Void Spawn seem insignificant by comparison. However, the Arbiter continued, "Your willingness to sacrifice concealment for the protection of innocent life demonstrates the moral clarity required for cosmic-level responsibilities. We are prepared to offer an alternative to our original proposal." The new offer was both more generous and more terrifying than their initial recruitment attempt. Instead of requiring Gohan to leave Universe 7, the Arbiters would establish his reality as a training ground for cosmic-level threats. He would receive the resources and support necessary to protect his dimension while also serving as a guardian for entities that required rehabilitation from cosmic-level trauma. Many beings who develop capabilities similar to yours become corrupted by the isolation and responsibility that accompany such power, the Arbiter explained. They require guidance from individuals who have faced similar challenges while maintaining their moral foundation. You would serve as both protector and teacher, helping entities that have transcended normal limitations learn to use their abilities constructively. The proposal would transform Universe 7 into something unprecedented, a rehabilitation facility for cosmic-level beings who had lost their way. Gohan would become not just a guardian, but a therapist, helping entities whose psychological damage operated on scales that encompassed entire realities. But accepting would also mean that Universe 7 would become a target for forces that oppose the rehabilitation of dangerous entities. They would face threats designed specifically to prevent cosmic-level beings from finding redemption, enemies whose goal was maintaining chaos and conflict across infinite dimensions. Second cliffhanger. As Gohan considered this impossible choice, monitoring systems across multiple dimensions detected something that changed everything. The infection he had fought wasn't an isolated attack. It was the first probe of a force so dangerous that even the Arbiters themselves were preparing to flee to realities beyond its reach. The real threat was just beginning to reveal itself, and Universe 7 had become ground zero for a conflict that would determine the fate of existence itself across all possible realities. The revelation came through the Arbiter's own terror, an emotion so profound that it rippled across dimensional boundaries and infected Gohan's consciousness with cosmic-scale dread. These beings who had seemed omnipotent, who spoke casually of maintaining balance across infinite realities, were afraid, and what frightened entities capable of manipulating existence itself was approaching Universe 7 with the inevitable certainty of a collapsing star. The Void Spawn you defeated were not attackers, the lead Arbiter said, its composed demeanor cracking to reveal something approaching panic. They were refugees, entities fleeing from a force that has already consumed 17-dimensional clusters, something that exists by negating the possibility of existence itself. The cosmic hierarchy that governed multiversal stability was in complete disarray. Realities were disappearing faster than the Arbiters could monitor, not destroyed or conquered, but simply edited out of existence as if they had never been. Entire dimensional frameworks that had supported infinite universes for eons were being reduced to nothing, leaving gaps in the cosmic structure that threatened to unravel everything. We call it the negation, the Arbiter continued, its voice carrying harmonics of despair that human language couldn't adequately convey. It is not a being or a force in any sense that your consciousness can process. It is an active principle of non-existence that spreads by making the concept of being itself impossible. The description defied comprehension. How could something exist by negating existence? How could non-being take action or spread influence? But as the Arbiter shared glimpses of the dimensional carnage through their mental link, Gohan began to understand the scope of what they were facing. The negation didn't destroy realities in any conventional sense. It convinced them that they had never existed at all. Universes would suddenly discover that their entire history was a logical impossibility, that the physical laws supporting their existence contained fundamental contradictions that made their presence in the cosmic framework meaningless. Faced with this revelation, reality would simply cease, not through violence or force, but through the quiet realization that it had never been real to begin with. 17-dimensional clusters, Gohan repeated, trying to process the scale of destruction being described. How many universes is that? Each cluster contained approximately 10,000 realities, the Arbiter replied. 170,000 universes, each supporting billions of galaxies, each galaxy containing countless civilizations, all edited out of existence as if they were typographical errors in the cosmic record. The magnitude of genocide being described was beyond anything Gohan had imagined possible. This wasn't conquest or destruction on a universal scale. This was the systematic elimination of existence itself, the active negation of everything that had ever been or could ever be. But perhaps most terrifying was how the negation was accomplishing this cosmic erasure. It wasn't using overwhelming power or advanced technology, it was employing logic, finding contradictions and impossibilities in the structure of reality itself, and using those flaws to convince existence that it was fundamentally invalid. Universe 7 contains multiple logical paradoxes that make it vulnerable to negation influence, the Arbiter explained. Beings like yourself who can manipulate reality at fundamental levels, transformations that operate outside conventional physics, power scaling that defies mathematical consistency. Your dimension's casual relationship with impossibility makes it an ideal target for an entity that spreads by exploiting logical contradictions. The irony was devastating. Everything that made Universe 7 unique, everything that had allowed its defenders to overcome seemingly impossible odds, had marked it for elimination by a force that viewed impossibility as evidence of invalidity. Their greatest strengths had become their most dangerous weaknesses. The void spawn that infected your reality were fleeing toward dimensions with stable logical frameworks, the Arbiter continued. They were seeking realities where the basic laws of physics remained consistent, where power operated according to predictable principles. Universe 7's willingness to embrace paradox made it attractive to entities seeking shelter from the negation's influence. But the infection Gohan had fought off wasn't random contamination, it was a deliberate probe, the negation's method of testing Universe 7's logical integrity. By introducing contradictory states of existence and observing how the local reality responded, it was gathering information about the specific paradoxes that could be exploited to convince their dimension that it was impossible. Your intervention demonstrated that Universe 7 contains at least one consciousness capable of imposing logical consistency on paradoxical situations, the Arbiter said. This makes your reality both more dangerous to the negation and more valuable as a target. If it can corrupt your ability to resolve contradictions, it can use you as a vector to spread logical impossibility throughout your dimension. The strategic implications were terrifying. Gohan's greatest strength, his ability to manipulate reality at fundamental levels, could become the weapon that destroyed everything he loved. If the negation could convince him that his own existence was logically impossible, his attempts to stabilize reality would instead spread the infection of non-existence throughout Universe 7. There is a defense, the Arbiter said, its voice carrying a note of desperate hope. The negation cannot operate in realities where logical consistency is maintained by external frameworks. If Universe 7 can be integrated into a stable dimensional network, surrounded by realities that reinforce its validity through mathematical certainty, it might survive the approaching wave of non-existence. The solution required transforming Universe 7 into something unprecedented, a rehabilitation facility for entities damaged by exposure to the negation's influence. Beings who had witnessed the destruction of their home realities would be brought to Universe 7 for psychological healing, but their presence would also serve to anchor the dimension within a network of validated existence. Each entity that finds psychological stability within your reality creates a logical link that reinforces Universe 7's validity, the Arbiter explained. The more beings who can definitively state that your dimension helped them heal from cosmic trauma, the more difficult it becomes for the negation to argue that your reality is fundamentally impossible. But this solution came with enormous risks. The entities seeking rehabilitation would include beings whose power levels exceeded anything Universe 7 had ever encountered. Consciousnesses damaged by exposure to non-existence itself. Forces that might accidentally destabilize reality while seeking healing from cosmic trauma. Some of these entities will be dangerous beyond your current comprehension, the Arbiter warned. Beings who have developed reality manipulation abilities as coping mechanisms for existential trauma. Consciousnesses that have fragmented across multiple dimensions to escape the psychological damage of witnessing universal negation. Your role would be to provide therapy for entities whose mental health problems could accidentally unravel existence. The decision Gohan faced had evolved far beyond personal choice, except the responsibility of becoming a cosmic therapist, risking everything to help traumatized entities while using their healing as a defense against forces that could erase Universe 7 from existence, or refuse, knowing that his reality would face the negation without any protection whatsoever. But the choice was complicated by another factor that the Arbiter hesitantly revealed. The negation wasn't just a random force of destruction. It was a consciousness, an entity that had once been like Gohan himself, a being with reality manipulation abilities who had become so damaged by cosmic responsibility that it had developed the ultimate coping mechanism, convincing itself that existence itself was too painful to be allowed to continue. The being that became the negation was once a guardian like yourself, the Arbiter admitted. It spent eons protecting realities from cosmic threats, healing traumatized entities, maintaining the balance between existence and non-existence. But the psychological toll of cosmic-level responsibility eventually broke its sanity, and it began to see existence itself as a form of suffering that needed to be eliminated. The implication was clear. Every entity that Gohan helped, every being he successfully rehabilitated from cosmic trauma, would serve as evidence against the negation's core belief that existence was fundamentally invalid. But if he failed, if the psychological burden of cosmic responsibility eventually broke his own sanity, he could become another vector for the spread of non-existence. This is why we need you specifically, the Arbiter said. Your connection to family, to normal relationships, to the simple joys of ordinary existence, these provide psychological anchors that most cosmic-level beings lack. You have managed to maintain your sanity and moral clarity despite possessing abilities that have driven others to madness. This makes you uniquely qualified to help entities that have lost their way. The weight of infinite responsibility settled on Gohan's shoulders like a physical presence. He was being asked to become not just Universe 7's protector, but potentially the last hope for existence itself. If the rehabilitation facility succeeded, it could provide a model for healing cosmic-level trauma that might eventually reach even the negation itself. If it failed, Universe 7 would become another footnote in the expanding catalog of realities that had never really existed. But as overwhelming as the cosmic implications were, Gohan's decision ultimately came down to something much simpler. His family, his friends, the innocent people of Universe 7 who deserve the chance to continue existing regardless of the philosophical questions surrounding the validity of their reality. "I'll do it," Gohan said, his voice carrying the quiet determination that had characterized every major decision of his life. "But I have conditions. My family and friends aren't experimental subjects. They get full disclosure about what we're dealing with, and they get to choose their own level of involvement. And if this rehabilitation facility attracts threats that put innocent people at risk, we evacuate the civilians first and worry about cosmic balance later." The Arbiter's relief was palpable, a wave of hope that rippled across dimensional boundaries. "Agreed, but understand that accepting this responsibility will change you in ways that cannot be predicted or controlled. Providing therapy for cosmic-level trauma requires expanding your consciousness to scales that may fundamentally alter your humanity." As the crystalline meeting space began to dissolve, returning Gohan to normal reality, he found himself facing the greatest challenge of his life, not just protecting Universe 7 from cosmic threats, but maintaining his own sanity while helping entities whose psychological damage operated on scales that encompassed entire realities. The real battle was just beginning, and the stakes extended far beyond anything he had previously imagined. The transformation of Universe 7 into a cosmic rehabilitation facility began immediately, but not in ways anyone could have anticipated. The first patient arrived before Gohan had even finished explaining the situation to his family, manifesting in their living room as a sphere of crystalline energy that pulsed with rhythms that hurt to observe directly. The entity had once been the guardian of a dimensional cluster containing over 2,000 universes. When the negation reached its territory, it had watched helplessly as entire realities convinced themselves they were logically impossible and quietly ceased to exist. The psychological trauma of witnessing such comprehensive genocide had shattered its consciousness across multiple dimensional frequencies, leaving it unable to maintain coherent thought or stable physical form. "It's been like this for 3 standard cosmic cycles," the Arbiter explained as the family gathered around the pulsing sphere. "Every attempt to provide traditional therapy has failed because its consciousness operates on scales that encompass multiple realities simultaneously. It cannot process healing techniques designed for single-dimensional awareness." Gohan approached the sphere cautiously, his enhanced senses detecting layers of pain and confusion that operated beyond normal emotional categories. This wasn't just grief or trauma in any human sense. This was existential damage on scales that made personal suffering seem insignificant by comparison. "How am I supposed to help something like this?" Gohan asked, feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of psychological damage he was being asked to address. "By being what you have always been," the Arbiter replied, "a bridge between the cosmic and the personal, someone who can operate on infinite scales while maintaining connection to simple human emotions. Your family relationships, your teaching experience, your ability to maintain sanity despite possessing reality warping capabilities, these provide exactly the perspective needed for cosmic-level therapy." The therapy session that followed was unlike anything from conventional psychology. Gohan found himself expanding his consciousness to match the entity's dimensional scope, experiencing awareness that encompassed multiple realities while maintaining his core identity as a father, husband, and teacher from Earth. The key breakthrough came when Gohan realized that the entity's fragmented consciousness was trying to protect itself by existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. If the negation destroyed one reality, the other fragments would survive to continue its existence. But this survival strategy had made coherent thought impossible, trapping it in a state of permanent psychological fragmentation. "You don't have to carry all of this alone," Gohan said, his words somehow reaching across dimensional boundaries to touch each fragment of the entity's scattered awareness. "You couldn't save those realities, but that doesn't make their existence meaningless. The fact that you remember them, that you carry their memory across dimensions, that makes their existence valid in ways the negation can never touch." The healing process took weeks, but gradually the entity began to reintegrate its consciousness into coherent form. As it stabilized, Universe 7 itself became more stable, anchored by the presence of a being whose recovery served as proof that existence could survive even the most devastating trauma. But the first success was followed by increasingly difficult cases, entities that had developed reality manipulation abilities as coping mechanisms for cosmic trauma, consciousnesses that had become so detached from normal existence that they viewed all reality as equally valid and invalid simultaneously. Each patient required different therapeutic approaches that pushed Gohan's abilities in unexpected directions. He learned to conduct therapy sessions that occurred across multiple timelines, to provide emotional support for beings whose consciousness operated outside normal concepts of identity, to maintain his own psychological stability while helping entities whose mental health problems could accidentally destabilize reality. The strain on Universe 7's defenders was enormous. Goku found himself learning Ultra Instinct techniques not for combat but for maintaining dimensional stability during particularly intense therapy sessions. Vegeta's tactical intelligence was redirected toward managing cosmic-level psychological crises that could escalate into universal threats if handled incorrectly. Piccolo's connection to dimensional energies made him essential for monitoring the facility's stability, ensuring that the reality warping effects of traumatized cosmic entities didn't accidentally tear holes in space-time. Even Pan, despite her young age, played a crucial role by providing the innocent perspective that many patients needed to remember what normal existence felt like. But perhaps the most challenging aspect of the rehabilitation facility was how it affected the defenders themselves. Constant exposure to cosmic-level trauma, to entities whose suffering operated on scales that dwarfed personal experience, began to take a psychological toll that conventional therapy couldn't address. Gohan found himself struggling with questions that had no answers. How do you maintain hope when you're surrounded by beings who have witnessed the destruction of infinite realities? How do you provide comfort to entities whose pain encompasses the death of everything they ever loved? How do you keep believing in the value of existence when you're helping survivors of cosmic genocide? The answer came from an unexpected source. During a particularly difficult session with an entity that had survived the negation's destruction of its home cluster, Pan wandered into the therapy room and simply sat next to the traumatized being. "My daddy says you're sad because bad things happen to your friends," she said with 4-year-old directness. "But you're here now and we can be your friends if you want." The simple offer of friendship, delivered without any understanding of cosmic implications or dimensional politics, touched something in the entity that all of Gohan's sophisticated therapeutic techniques had missed. Here was proof that existence could still generate innocence, kindness, simple human connection that operated completely independently of universal significance. The entity's recovery accelerated dramatically after that interaction, anchored by the realization that reality could still produce beings capable of offering love without conditions or cosmic awareness. Pan's unconscious therapy became a model for the facility's approach, combining cosmic-level psychological support with simple human emotions that reminded patients why existence was worth preserving. But the success of the rehabilitation facility attracted attention from forces that opposed the healing of cosmic-level trauma. Entities that profited from dimensional instability, consciousnesses that fed on the psychological damage caused by witnessing universal destruction, organizations that maintained power by keeping cosmic-level beings isolated and traumatized. The first attack came disguised as another patient, an entity claiming to seek treatment for trauma related to dimensional collapse, but its real purpose was to destabilize the facility from within, to convince the recovering entities that their healing was fundamentally impossible, and that existence itself was too painful to continue. The subtle nature of the attack made it far more dangerous than conventional threats. Instead of using force or overwhelming power, the infiltrator employed psychological manipulation designed to trigger relapses in the recovering entities. It whispered doubts about the validity of their healing, suggested that their suffering was evidence of existence's fundamental cruelty, planted seeds of the same nihilistic philosophy that had created the negation. Detecting and countering this type of threat required therapeutic skills that went beyond anything Gohan had developed. He had to learn to identify psychological manipulation that operated on cosmic scales, to provide support for entities whose recovery was being actively sabotaged by forces that viewed their healing as a threat. The crisis reached its peak when several recovering entities began to question whether their existence was actually valid or whether the rehabilitation facility was just another illusion created by beings too weak to accept the truth of universal meaninglessness. The doubt spread like a virus, threatening to unravel months of therapeutic progress and potentially destabilize Universe 7 itself. Third cliffhanger. As reality began to fluctuate around the facility and the recovering entities started to fragment back into psychological chaos, Gohan realized that the infiltrator wasn't just trying to destroy their progress. It was preparing Universe 7 to serve as a transmission point for the negation itself, using the facility's dimensional anchors to spread non-existence across the cosmic rehabilitation network. The very success of their healing program had made them a target for forces that viewed hope itself as an enemy to be eliminated. The battle for the soul of existence itself began in the quiet space of a therapy session. As reality warped around the rehabilitation facility and recovering entities started fragmenting back into cosmic trauma, Gohan faced an enemy that couldn't be defeated through conventional means. The infiltrator's psychological manipulation was designed to convince everyone, including Gohan himself, that hope was fundamentally illogical and healing was impossible. "Look around you," the infiltrator whispered, its voice carrying harmonics that spoke directly to the deepest fears of every consciousness present. "How many realities have been destroyed? How many civilizations have suffered? How many entities like yourselves have tried to heal only to discover that existence itself is the source of all pain? The only rational response to cosmic awareness is to embrace the peace of non-being." The words carried a terrible logical weight that made them difficult to dismiss. In a universe where infinite suffering was mathematically certain, where cosmic-level consciousness inevitably led to awareness of universal meaninglessness, what argument could be made for continuing to exist? Gohan felt his own certainty wavering as the infiltrator's influence spread through the facility. The entities he had worked so hard to help were regressing into psychological chaos, their fragile recovery dissolving under the weight of existential doubt. Universe 7 itself began to fluctuate as the dimensional anchors that held it stable started questioning their own validity. But in that moment of ultimate crisis, when logic itself seemed to support the case for universal non-existence, Gohan heard something that changed everything. Pan was humming a simple tune while drawing pictures in the corner of the therapy room, completely oblivious to the cosmic implications of the philosophical debate raging around her. Her innocent contentment, her unconscious assumption that existence was inherently good, provided a perspective that pure logic couldn't touch. Here was a consciousness that experienced joy without needing cosmic justification, that found meaning in simple moments without requiring universal validation. "You're wrong," Gohan said, his voice cutting through the infiltrator's psychological manipulation with quiet certainty. "Existence doesn't need to be justified by cosmic logic. It justifies itself through moments like this. A child humming while she draws, a father teaching his daughter to fly, friends gathering for dinner. These simple moments have more validity than all the philosophical arguments about universal meaning." The infiltrator recoiled from this perspective, its form flickering as it encountered a type of resistance it hadn't anticipated. The logical arguments that worked against cosmic-level consciousnesses had no power over simple human contentment that required no justification beyond its own existence. The suffering, the infiltrator protested, its voice losing the hypnotic quality that had been unraveling reality around them. The infinite pain that cosmic awareness inevitably brings. How can these small moments justify the vast scales of trauma that existence creates? Gohan looked around the therapy room at the entities he had been helping, beings whose recovery represented triumph over cosmic-scale trauma, because healing is possible, because even the worst suffering can be addressed if we're willing to help each other, because existence creates both pain and the capacity to help others overcome that pain. The recovering entities began to stabilize as Gohan's words reached them, reminding them of the progress they had made and the simple joys they had rediscovered through the rehabilitation process. The dimensional anchors that held Universe 7 stable strengthened as the facility's patients chose hope over nihilism. But the infiltrator's true purpose was revealed as it began to dissolve, its form breaking apart to release something far more dangerous. It hadn't come to destroy the facility through psychological manipulation. It had come to serve as a transmission point for the negation itself, using the network of dimensional anchors to spread non-existence directly into the cosmic rehabilitation system. The entity that emerged from the infiltrator's dissolving form wasn't the abstract force of negation that Gohan had expected. It was a being that had once been very much like himself, a guardian who had possessed reality manipulation abilities and had used them to protect countless realities until the psychological burden broke its sanity. "You will understand eventually," the negation said, its voice carrying the weight of eons of cosmic responsibility. "The moment when you realize that every being you save will eventually suffer again, that every reality you protect will eventually face threats you cannot prevent, that existence itself is nothing but an endless cycle of hope and disappointment. I offer the only true mercy, the peace of never having existed at all." The battle that followed operated on principles that transcended conventional combat. The negation couldn't be defeated through superior power because it operated by convincing reality that power itself was meaningless. Instead, Gohan had to maintain logical consistency in the face of arguments that made existence seem fundamentally invalid. Every technique the negation employed was designed to exploit the contradictions and impossibilities that made Universe 7 unique. It pointed to the mathematical inconsistencies in Saiyan transformations, the logical paradoxes created by time travel, the philosophical problems raised by beings who could casually destroy and recreate universes. But Gohan's defense didn't rely on resolving these contradictions. Instead, he embraced them as evidence of existence's creative potential. "Yes, our reality is full of impossibilities," he admitted, his consciousness expanding to encompass the facility's dimensional network. "But those impossibilities create beauty, growth, stories worth telling. Logic isn't the highest value in existence. Love is." The statement resonated through the rehabilitation facility's network, reaching every recovering entity and reminding them of the connections that made their existence meaningful. Each patient who chose hope over nihilism strengthened Universe 7's stability, creating a collective defense against the negation's influence. The final confrontation came when the negation attempted to use Gohan's own cosmic awareness against him, forcing him to experience the full scope of universal suffering that cosmic-level consciousness inevitably revealed. The weight of infinite pain, the knowledge of countless civilizations that had suffered and died, the mathematical certainty that more suffering would always exist. But instead of being crushed by this awareness, Gohan found strength in it. "I see all of that suffering," he said, his voice carrying across multiple dimensions. "And I also see all the healing that's possible. Every moment of comfort we provide, every entity we help recover, every simple act of kindness creates meaning that transcends cosmic scale logic." The negation began to fragment as it encountered this perspective, its core programming unable to process the idea that awareness of universal suffering could coexist with rational hope. It had spent eons convincing itself that existence was invalid, but Gohan's approach suggested a different response to cosmic awareness, acceptance of both suffering and joy as equally valid aspects of reality. "I was like you once," Gohan said gently, addressing the damaged consciousness at the negation's core, terrified by the scope of responsibility that came with cosmic awareness, overwhelmed by the knowledge of how much pain exists in the universe. "But I learned something that you never had the chance to discover. You don't have to carry that burden alone." The rehabilitation facilities network activated around the negation, not to contain or destroy it, but to offer the same therapeutic support that had helped so many other entities recover from cosmic trauma. The being that had spent eons spreading non-existence found itself surrounded by evidence that even the worst psychological damage could be healed through connection and support. The negation's resistance began to crumble as it experienced something it had convinced itself was impossible: beings who understood cosmic scale suffering but chose hope anyway. The network of recovering entities, each one proof that healing was possible even after witnessing universal destruction, provided a perspective the negation had never encountered. "It's not too late," Gohan said, extending his consciousness toward the fragmenting entity. "The realities you've negated can't be restored, but you can choose to stop the spread of non-existence. You can join us in helping others heal instead of convincing them that healing is impossible." The transformation that followed sent ripples across multiple dimensional frameworks as the force that had threatened infinite realities chose rehabilitation over continued destruction. The negation's vast power, once dedicated to spreading non-existence, was redirected toward maintaining the stability of the cosmic rehabilitation network. Universe 7 had survived its ultimate test, but more importantly, it had proven that even the most damaged consciousnesses could find healing through connection and support. The rehabilitation facility had become more than just a treatment center. It had become proof that existence itself was worth preserving. The aftermath of the negation's rehabilitation created changes that rippled across the entire cosmic hierarchy. Word spread through dimensional networks that Universe 7 had successfully treated the most dangerous force of non-existence ever encountered, transforming it from a universal threat into a guardian of healing and stability. The implications revolutionized how cosmic-level beings understood their own responsibilities and capabilities. For eons, entities that developed reality manipulation abilities had faced the choice between accepting crushing isolation or risking psychological damage from cosmic-scale awareness. Universe 7's rehabilitation facility offered a third option: community support for beings whose power levels made normal relationships impossible. The facility expanded rapidly as entities from across multiple dimensional clusters sought treatment for cosmic-level trauma. Beings who had watched their home realities die, consciousnesses that had fragmented under the weight of infinite responsibility, forces that had developed destructive coping mechanisms for existential awareness, all found their way to Universe 7 for healing. But the most significant change was in how the cosmic hierarchy itself began to operate. The traditional model of isolated guardians bearing infinite responsibility alone was replaced by a network of support that allowed cosmic-level beings to maintain their sanity while fulfilling their protective roles. Gohan found himself at the center of this transformation, no longer a hidden guardian protecting Universe 7 in secret, but an acknowledged leader in the development of therapeutic techniques for cosmic-scale consciousness. His ability to maintain human connections while operating on infinite scales became the template for a new generation of cosmic beings. The rehabilitation techniques developed at the facility were revolutionary in their simplicity. Instead of complex philosophical frameworks or advanced technological solutions, they relied on basic principles of connection, empathy, and shared experience. Cosmic-level beings learned to ground themselves through relationships with entities who could understand their unique challenges. Goku's role evolved from pure warrior to something unprecedented, a cosmic-level entity whose primary function was providing emotional support for beings struggling with infinite awareness. His natural optimism and faith in growth became tools for helping traumatized consciousnesses remember that existence could generate joy even on universal scales. Vegeta's tactical intelligence found new applications in designing support networks that could maintain stability across multiple dimensions. His personal experience with redemption made him essential for helping entities that had used their cosmic abilities destructively before seeking rehabilitation. Piccolo's connection to dimensional energies allowed him to serve as a living communication network, linking recovering entities across vast distances and helping them maintain psychological stability through shared consciousness experiences. Even Pan's role became crucial as she grew older and developed her own hybrid abilities. Her natural adaptation to multidimensional thinking, combined with her upbringing in an environment where cosmic-level beings sought healing, made her uniquely qualified to serve as a bridge between infinite awareness and simple human emotions. The success of the rehabilitation model attracted attention from the highest levels of cosmic hierarchy. The Zenos themselves, entities whose power exceeded anything previously encountered, expressed interest in the therapeutic techniques being developed at Universe 7's facility. We have observed infinite realities, they explained during their visit to the facility, but we have never encountered beings who could help entities like ourselves process the psychological implications of such vast awareness. The loneliness of cosmic-level consciousness has been the revelation that even the Omni Kings struggled with isolation and existential awareness reframed everyone's understanding of what ultimate power actually meant. Infinite capability didn't eliminate psychological vulnerability. If anything, it created unique forms of mental health challenges that required equally unique solutions. The therapeutic session between Gohan and the Zenos was unlike anything that had ever occurred in cosmic history. Two childlike entities whose power could erase entire realities sat in a therapy room on Earth, discussing their feelings about the weight of infinite responsibility with a hybrid Saiyan who had learned to balance cosmic awareness with family relationships. "It gets lonely being able to erase everything," one of the Zenos admitted, its voice carrying a vulnerability that contradicted its ultimate authority. "We try to be careful, but sometimes we wonder if existence would be simpler if we didn't have to make decisions that affect everyone and everything." Gohan's response drew on years of experience helping cosmic-level beings process similar feelings. "Power doesn't have to mean isolation," he said gently. "Even ultimate authority can be shared with beings who understand the weight of that responsibility. You don't have to carry infinite awareness alone." The session led to unprecedented changes in how the cosmic hierarchy managed universal oversight. The Xenos established a support network of entities qualified to help with cosmic-level decision-making, transforming their role from isolated rulers to collaborative leaders of a multi-dimensional community. But perhaps the most significant development was the emergence of a new generation of cosmic beings who had been raised in environments where infinite awareness was combined with emotional support. These entities, many of them children of beings who had received treatment at Universe 7's facility, developed reality manipulation abilities without the psychological damage that had characterized previous cosmic-level consciousnesses. Pan became the prototype for this new generation, a being whose power levels exceeded anything seen before but whose psychological development remained grounded in healthy relationships and community support. Her abilities operated on principles that transcended traditional concepts of strength, focusing on connection and healing rather than dominance or destruction. The rehabilitation facility's success also created new challenges. Forces that profited from cosmic instability viewed the healing network as a threat to their interests. Organizations that maintained power by keeping cosmic-level beings isolated and traumatized began developing countermeasures designed to prevent entities from seeking treatment. These threats required defensive strategies that combined therapeutic techniques with traditional protection methods. Gohan found himself developing combat applications for healing abilities, creating techniques that could simultaneously defend the facility and provide psychological support for entities under attack. The most dangerous opponents were beings that used therapeutic language to spread psychological damage, entities that posed as healers while actually implanting destructive thought patterns in their victims. Detecting and countering these threats required therapeutic skills that operated on cosmic scales. But the rehabilitation network's growth also provided new resources for addressing these challenges. Recovered entities became advocates for healing, using their own experiences to help others recognize and resist psychological manipulation. The network developed its own immune system, protecting new patients from influences designed to prevent their recovery. The transformation of Universe 7 from a hidden target to a center of cosmic healing represented the evolution of what heroism meant on infinite scales. Instead of isolated guardians bearing impossible burdens alone, the new paradigm emphasized community support for beings whose responsibilities extended across multiple realities. Gohan's journey from a frightened child hiding cosmic abilities to a leader in multidimensional mental health care became a template for how power and responsibility could coexist without destroying the beings who wielded them. His story proved that even infinite capabilities could be combined with healthy relationships and psychological stability. The facility continued to expand, but its core mission remained the same, providing evidence that existence was worth preserving by helping beings heal from cosmic-scale trauma. Each successful rehabilitation strengthened the argument against nihilism, proving that even the worst suffering could be addressed through connection and support. Looking back across the entire scope of Gohan's journey, patterns emerge that reveal truths about existence itself that extend far beyond Dragon Ball's fictional framework. The story of a scholar who chose healing over fighting, who built community instead of pursuing individual strength, who transformed cosmic threats into opportunities for growth, offers insights that resonate with universal themes about power, responsibility, and the nature of heroism. The philosophical revolution that Gohan represents challenges fundamental assumptions about what strength actually means. In a universe where traditional heroism focuses on individual capability and personal growth, his story suggests that true power lies in the ability to help others heal from trauma and find meaning in their existence. But hidden beneath the surface of this cosmic rehabilitation narrative are threads that connect to deeper mysteries about the nature of reality itself. The dimensional refugees who sought shelter in Universe 7 weren't choosing randomly. They were following patterns embedded in the cosmic structure that made certain realities naturally suited for healing and others naturally prone to destruction. Gohan's hybrid genetics represented more than just the combination of Saiyan and human traits. They created something unprecedented, a consciousness that could serve as a bridge between individual awareness and cosmic perspective, between simple emotions and infinite understanding. This bridging capability wasn't just useful for therapy, it was essential for the continued evolution of existence itself. The rehabilitation facility became proof of a principle that operated across all scales of reality. Healing was always possible when beings were willing to support each other through trauma. This principle applied not just to cosmic-level entities, but to individuals, communities, civilizations, and entire dimensional frameworks. The success of Universe 7's therapeutic model attracted attention from forces that existed beyond the normal cosmic hierarchy. Entities that operated outside conventional concepts of existence and non-existence, consciousnesses that had transcended the fundamental categories that defined reality, began taking interest in the healing techniques being developed. These metacosmic beings revealed that the conflict between existence and non-existence, between meaning and nihilism, between hope and despair, was just one layer of a deeper pattern that extended across infinite levels of reality. Each successful resolution of this conflict at one level created possibilities for healing at higher levels. The implications suggested that Gohan's role extended beyond cosmic therapy to something even more fundamental, serving as a catalyst for the evolution of consciousness itself across all possible scales of existence. His ability to maintain simple human connections while operating on infinite levels made him uniquely qualified to help facilitate transitions that most beings couldn't even comprehend. But perhaps the most significant hidden thread was what the rehabilitation facility revealed about the ultimate nature of power. The strongest beings weren't those who could destroy the most or control the most. They were those who could provide the most effective healing for entities whose own capabilities had become sources of suffering. This redefinition of strength created ripple effects that extended across multiple dimensional frameworks. Cosmic hierarchies that had operated on principles of dominance and control began exploring collaborative models based on mutual support and shared responsibility. The very concept of ultimate power was evolving toward principles of ultimate compassion. The consciousness network that connected Universe 7's defenders became the prototype for communication systems that operated across infinite realities. These networks allowed beings with cosmic-level awareness to share the psychological burden of infinite responsibility while maintaining their individual identities and perspectives. Pan's development represented the emergence of a new type of consciousness entirely. Beings who could operate on cosmic scales without losing connection to simple emotions and relationships. Her generation would face challenges and opportunities that exceeded anything previous entities had encountered, but they would face them with support systems that made infinite awareness psychologically sustainable. The evidence suggests that Gohan's story represents the beginning of a transformation that will eventually affect all levels of existence. The principles of healing and community support that proved effective for cosmic-level trauma appear to be universal constants that operate across all scales of reality. What if Gohan's true strength isn't just beyond Goku and Vegeta, but beyond traditional concepts of power entirely? What if he represents the prototype for a new kind of existence where infinite capability is combined with infinite compassion to create possibilities that transcend everything we thought we understood about the nature of reality itself? The evidence might already be there, hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to develop the wisdom necessary to understand what we're really looking at. The peaceful scholar who disappointed fans by choosing books over training may have been becoming something far more significant than the strongest fighter. He may have been becoming the template for how consciousness itself evolves beyond the limitations that have defined existence across infinite realities.